Limerick Schools Special Board of Education meeting number 1534 is now called to order. Just as a reminder, meetings are now fully open to in-person as well as on the district's YouTube channel. And in accordance with the St. Louis County COVID-19 guidelines, fully vaccinated individuals, as we are up here, are not required to wear face coverings. Face coverings are required for all unvaccinated individuals. 2.0, do we have any changes to the agenda, Dr. Light?
We do not.
Okay, that being said, do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Motion by Jen.
Second.
Second by Mike. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Just to let everybody know, Matt Alonzo is not in attendance today. He's at a Youth Leadership Academy camp doing some great work, so he will be filled in, but he's not in attendance. So all those are able, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. We do have in 4.0 some action items by consent, 4.01 to 4.04. Would anyone like to remove any of these items for individual consideration? Okay, hearing none. Do I have a motion to approve the action items by consent, 4.01 to 4.04?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Motion by Megan, second by Christy, correct? Was that you?
Yeah.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. 5.0, the big reason why we're here, we have the adoption of the 2021-2022 budget, so I'll turn it over to Joelle.
Thanks for showing up during the day. Very important meeting that there you go. Again, thanks for showing up this morning for this very important meeting that sets the financial picture for our budget, new budget year, which actually starts tomorrow. So we've been working on budget since January. We had a budget workshop in April, and then I've been talking to you guys, communicating often about what's going on in the budget. So really, this is just the time we take the formal document to you for approval, and we wait till this point in the year because a lot of things happen in the last month of the school year, or really the last 2 weeks. Our teachers' payroll is a big expenditure that happens in June, and we really want to see where our books end up. There are some things that you can do as transfers to other funds, and that right at the end of the year, if you have the funds to do that. So that's why we want to wait till it's later to make sure we get everything in place for the first day of the next school year. In your package, you have the budget document, and there's a lot of information in it. I'm just going to go over a few things that may have changed since our workshop. And those things that have changed maybe since our workshop is just kids coming back, enrollment going up, and those are good things that we call it before COVID and after COVID, and we've set this budget like it was before COVID. And we're seeing growth and enrollment, all the good things that we didn't see last year. So going through the budget document, there's a table of contents, and I'll just highlight a few things. The budget message just talks really about the work that goes around building a budget every year. It's not just me and my team that sit and write the numbers, but it's everybody who has a financial responsibility in the district really starts working on it in December. Our principals start submitting items for this year's budget, and then department heads, anybody that manages money gets together and we talk about budgets. We do a hybrid zero-based budget, and everybody builds their budgets from the ground up annually. So we don't just roll and add a 2% or a 3%. Each department manager is responsible for their budget, does look at individual items and build it in our accounting system manually. So all of our budget expenditures surround our compass goals, which everybody is familiar with that is on our webpage. And we look at how can we fund those compass goals, and that's how we direct our funds. We had our budget workshop again with the board and compass goal discussion in April. And then the other big part of budgeting is negotiations. So that wrapped up very early this year. which was helpful, got us a head start, and went well. So we all know that the average raise for teachers in the package was about 4% this year, and that was built into the salaries. Salaries and benefits are 80%, 85% of our budget, and so once that is decided, it really ticks off some things that we need to do. The other thing we talk about is fund balance reserves, and I'll mention that right before we go on, you adopt. We do have a report only on this item. I've been sending you information about a fund balance policy. We have a fund balance procedure right now, and we'd like to move that to policy. We also talked about that in the workshop, and again, I've been communicating over the last month about that idea. But we do know that COVID hit us hard as far as fund balances. We will be starting this year with a lower fund balance in our operating and in our capital than we had last year and years before because of COVID. There were programs, like if you look at our enterprise programs, those that are revenue-based, that didn't have revenue this year, preschool, community ed, food service. We had to use fund balance to balance our budget this year, primarily due to those. This year is a reassessment year for revenue. We are limited, though, in our growth based on CPI, and we've talked about that in April as well. CPI, which is a consumer price index, our inflation rate that the state allows us to grow by is 1.4% this year. The assessed valuation data that we got early from St. Louis County is an estimate only, but at that time, growth of assessed valuation in our district was right at 7%. So we will have to roll our levy back because of the Hancock Amendment, which says we'll hold taxpayers harmless for spikes in assessed valuation. So since CPI is set at 1.4 and growth is 7, our levy's probably gonna go back about 12 cents. And I say that's estimated right now because we really don't get our final levy data, our final assessed valuation data till late August, when St. Louis County gives us our final numbers and also gives our new construction, and then we set the levy on September 1st. So when you look at this document, it's called preliminary in nature a little bit because we don't have all of the revenue items we need to say it's final. This budget does have some federal revenue, or I would say stimulus money, COVID, our ESSER dollars that everybody's been hearing about in the paper. We did receive some ESSER dollars for COVID. It's really a federal stimulus package in the year that we're coming out of, and we will get more in the year we're going into. Total for us, though, is around $5 million for that ESSER or COVID money. And I'll tell you, we've spent all of it. So if you look, you see a lot of paper in other districts, and ESSER dollars or that federal stimulus package is based on your demographics, your free and reduced count. So every district's a little bit different in how much they received. We're on the lower end of the federal stimulus because of our demographics. But that money has been spent. If you all recall, all the things that we did to keep kids in school last year, we hired at least 26 additional positions. We had additional nurses, contact tracing, lots more supplies. So we did it right, I believe, and we kept kids in school, and that's why we have fund balance and reserves, is so when you get into some kind of situation, it's my first in my 25-year career to have lived through something like that. Our fund balance is what saved us in the end. This budget, let's see. So this budget does not have our title or other federal program, our regular reoccurring federal program dollars in it. That application is due in, submit it, okay? And we have a preliminary allocation on our dollars, but when we get our final allocation and the budget is approved, we'll bring our federal programs like Title I, Title II, those to the board for amendment at that time. So don't be surprised when you see those hitting early. The other thing that I talk about in the budget memo is carryover requests. The district several years ago went off of the use it or lose it thing for buildings. We are a cash basis expenditure system, and in the past, if buildings and budget managers didn't spend their money, they would lose it. And that's not uncommon just for Lindbergh, that's pretty common at other districts. So what we allow budget managers to do is, instead of at the last month and last hour buying a whole bunch of supplies so that they spend all their money or doing things, they can submit a plan to Dr. Lake and I about carrying forward funds for use in the next year for a purpose. This year, the carried forward funds are higher than normal. I mean, we were out of school a lot, let's just put it that way, and a lot of things that weren't spent. So I think that's to the tune of about $2.3 million. And so one of our first amendments in next year will be putting that money back into the building's hands. So that's a large item on this. In summary, I guess revenue is, the operating revenue budget is about $95,826,000. And our debt, that's the revenue side, debt revenue is about $12.5 million. And then we have Prop R bond issue money. The revenue for that is just interest, and we're hoping that we get $100,000 this year. Our interest revenue was way down last year due to the economy. Total expenditures in this budget are $173 million, and as you listen to those numbers, you can see that expenditures exceed revenue, but that is just because of the prop money that we still have on hand. So our goal is to spend all the prop money, get our projects done. So there's $76 million still on the books for Prop R, and that's why our expenditures exceed revenue. If you look on the summary page for budget adoption, you'll see something new that you haven't seen before, but it is talking about what we're planning to use from fund balance. Like we have a fund balance at June 30, but there's some restricted money in there and some unrestricted money. And so we just want to make everybody aware what funds in fund balance are committed for a specific purpose, that probably in January, you're going to see some outgoing expenditures. So our fund balance will drop in July, not January. And those are listed on the budget summary. That's carry forward request. We have some good things happening with our Dressel crosswalks and roadside flashers, some road improvements we've been waiting for from MoDOT for a long time, that we plan to use fund balance dollars for. So also in the budget document, you'll find a page that talks about our debt, what we have in outstanding debt. That's the last page of the budget document. And I think that's all I have. So I'll open the floor to questions. It is, on the operating side, it is a balanced budget, which means we've budgeted expenditures to equal revenue. We have a few changes since we talked to you in April, where I have 15 ads on the staffing side right now. When we came to you guys in April, at the April workshop, we had 9. Since then, again, due to growth, we've had 6 other positions that we need to add, and who knows? As kids keep enrolling, there may be additional ones, but that's good things. So I'm gonna let Dr. Lake add.
No, just a couple of things on the growth. Brian updated us yesterday. We have one section, so we may still have to hire another teacher between now and August. We got a section that's about, and if you remember, we put in that staffing matrix 3 years ago that it's clean, it's easy for us to budget, that it tips and here it goes, and class sizes are good, and it's just a good way for us to budget and manage that. And I would just say, back to the carry forward money that we allow the buildings, I just think, when we talked about that 3 years ago of, how do we be responsible with taxpayers' dollars, that's a good example of not just spending the money to spend it on things that we really don't need. I know when I was a high school principal back in a district in Kansas City, at the end of the year, my bookkeeper in the building and I would sit there and go, okay, let's get this as close to zero as we can, whether we needed stuff or not. And this is a great example of how we're really being responsible. It's like what we do in our own personal budgets. When you want to buy a big piece of furniture or things, you save for it and you plan for it, and that's what we're asking our buildings to do, instead of coming to us and going, oh, I need some new classroom furniture. Well, what is your plan? We're giving you that money to be responsible with that. So we're pleased with our principals like having that ownership as well, and other budget managers like Tara as well, and folks. So anyways, those are just my couple things that I wanted to highlight. And again, Joelle made reference to it, the revenue from early childhood and Flyers Club after school and community ed, and it's just, when we finally got to sit down and see really what was that loss of revenue. And so now it's time for us to we need to build our fund balances back up a little bit to be safe, and we don't have to do that all in 1 year, but over the next few years, we're gonna get that back to where we feel comfortable if we ever have a situation like this again. So, but they did take a little bit of a hit, so. And that's to be expected, so, because again, it's like Joelle
We're
said,
not
I really
alone.
believe
It's not
what we
just
did
labor.
for our community, for our teachers, for our kids, for our families. Not 100% of people are always gonna agree with what we did and how we did it, but I think, providing, childcare for our teachers so they didn't have to worry, because we were one of the few districts and the only district that started with kids in school in August. And so if they lived in Parkway or Rockwood and they had young kids, they could bring them to us and they could still teach and do what they needed to do. So we, there was just some expense there, but we felt like it was a responsible thing to do for our employees and our entire community. So those are my thoughts. And just kind of recapping the financial side of the district for the past year.
Well, again, the document's in your, on the board packet, and there's always a lot more data behind these few pages, so that's why I have Dawn and Shelley. Any of us can answer budget questions pretty much, if you need them or need to come visit us and talk about it. So we will amend as needed. We've been doing that for the last 3 years as well, and that just keeps you abreast of things as they occur, so, thanks.
Thank you. And I, for one, think you did an extraordinary job. These are exceptional times, and, continuing to spend the money where you needed to spend it in a thoughtful way, and while still, being in a fiscally responsible manner. So that's appreciated, for sure. Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the adoption of the 2021-2022 budget as presented?
So moved.
Motion by Jen, second?
Second.
Second by Christie. Do you have any other questions before we go to a vote?
I don't have any questions, but just thank you. That was a lot to negotiate, and while we're all trying to figure out our home budgets, I can't even imagine the school district budget, so thank you. And I think we came out of this pretty good, so thank you very much to all your team.
All right. Anything else? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries 6-0. Now we'll move to 6.0, and this is you again, I believe, Joelle. It's an update on financial reporting, MSBA.
This is right now just for information only, I guess. And we have a process when we update board policies, which go through Brian's department. And I just wanted to talk about this. The next month, we'll bring it as a first read, and then 30 days later is when you guys will actually adopt it. So again, most of this item that you see there is already in procedure. I've added a new section on fund balance policy after, and we'll submit it to MSBA after this meeting, and they'll do their legalese on it to make sure it's ready to be presented for first read in July. But it talks about actions leading to restricted, committed, and assigned fund balance and how that works. It also talks about the additions about order to spending and use and replenishment of fund balance. So districts retain reserves for several reasons: to manage cash flow, to mitigate volatility in funding, which, we experienced that last year too when we had major withholding from the state. We had lower collections in local revenue due to COVID. To address unexpected costs, to save for large purchases, and then fund balance policy also does help with our credit rating when we go out to issue bonds. So we're asking for a targeted operating reserve, and I don't want to, Dr. Lake and I had a lot of conversations about this, and we really don't want to have a percent per se that we're trying to stick with, but we just want to make it known because maintaining an adequate fund balance at June 30 is essential for Lindbergh. Every district's a little bit different, but that first 6 months of the school year, we're drawing from our savings, a little bit of state revenue in there, to meet our expenditures until we get our local tax dollars. We get paid once a year in late December. Our local tax revenue is our largest income. And so to make payroll, to keep the utilities on and do all of that, at June 30, we need certain money in the bank. So pretty much we're asking not for a percent fund balance, but that the targeted operating reserves for June 30th each year be adequate to cover payroll and accounts payable from July 1 until December 31st each year. So we also talk about that if unrestricted fund balance falls below those targeted reserves, that, like Dr. Lake said, we want the board to try to pay that back within 1 to 3 years, and just, be cognizant of that. And then on the other side of that, if you have reserves above that target, then we strategically spend that down. And I think you've seen that in action for the last 3 years. We've done quite a bit of building improvements from reserves that were there that we strategically spent down. I just think this makes it a little bit more public about how we handle our fund balance. So if you have any questions between now and before we present it for approval, just let me know.
All right, thank you. Now we'll move to 7.0, which is recess. We don't have any need to adjourn for our executive session, so then that'll take us to 9.0, which is adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn special board meeting number 1534? Motion by Kathy, second?
Second.
Second by Jen. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries 6-0. Special board meeting 1534 is now adjourned.